Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Science of B2B. I'm Kerry Cunningham, and I head up research and thought leadership here at 6 Sense. And today we're going to talk about a subject that is near and dear to my heart. So before we get to our topic today, I want to remind everybody that all of the content that we produce, and we produce a lot of it, is available for free on 6sense.com/research. That's the easiest way to get there. And you'll see our site is called the Science of B2B. All of the content is available. You don't even have to fill out a form. It would be super hypocritical if you had to fill out a form, so you don't. There's the videos that we produce. There's lots and lots of written content as well, some long, some short. So please do take advantage of all of that content that we produce. And when I say we, I think it's really important that I point out that it isn't just me here at the Science of B2B, that I've got a colleague who's absolutely wonderful, Sarah Bustani. And so we produced a lot of content for you. Today, we're going to be talking about content that comes from this particular report called B2B Buyers Are Not Blank Slates. I'm going to explain what that means, and we'll talk through those concepts right now. The blank slate theory of human nature. Many of you will have read about this in school and college, but the blank slate theory of human nature was a very well-intentioned view of how humans operate. It sprang a lot from behavioralism in the 50s. But the idea with this is that nature and experience could essentially shape us into whatever it wanted or whatever we want, that we all were born with precisely the same capabilities in life. Now, of course, that was naive, and we know it's not true, and it was never even close to being true. But what the idea was is that we want everybody to have equal opportunities to thrive. And that certainly seems like the right thing. So what's wrong with blank slates? Well, the problem with blank slates is that we're not. We're all born with different capabilities. Those capabilities make us stronger and make us better as a society. And everybody should have the equal opportunity to thrive given whatever the capabilities they have. Now, one of the best sources of kind of debunking the idea of the blank slate and also talking about what's so great about all of that diversity, including neurodiversity, is Steven Pinker, one of my intellectual heroes. So if you haven't heard of Steven Pinker or this book, I strongly recommend checking it out. All right, but back to B2B. The research we're going to be talking about is part of the buyer experience research that we've done. We've done two major buyer experience studies, one in 23 and one in 24. We also did a supplemental piece of research that a lot of what I'm going to talk about today comes from. We did that right after we did the buyer experience study last summer, and we had a sample size for that of about 661. Very similar distribution of companies, company sizes, purchase sizes, and individuals who made up that study. Average purchase cost of the solutions that they bought around $250K. And you can see both in the research that we do, the published research, what all of the distributions of those things are. So please do check it out. A lot of the questions that I get are about, does this apply to me because my company sells this or that? It's all in the research, and we check to see whether it applies to you. So if it does or doesn't, it's going to be in the report. All right, so here are the parameters of the buying journeys that we're talking about. We're talking about an 11.5-month buying journey that's going to evaluate 4.5 vendors. I'm going to round up to 5 in most of the way I talk about this because evaluating 4.5 vendors just is kind of weird. That buying group that's looking after this buying process is about 11. Now, the number of vendors evaluated here is extremely important. It is the number one cause of complexity in a buying process. If you knock one vendor off this list, then the buying group goes down to about 8 or 9, and the buying journey goes down to about 9 months. That's how much difference one vendor makes. But here's the thing that's interesting about the vendors that buyers are evaluating. It's that they already know you. And why do they know you? Well, for the most part, they're not buying a solution in a category that they're unfamiliar with. Most purchases in B2B are in existing categories. And of course, when you think about it logically, that makes sense. Now, we're always hearing about the brand new latest solution, and we're seeing brand new categories, but those new solutions and new categories, they don't sell very much. Not at first anyway. It takes a while for them to become embedded and become really meaningful parts of the B2B ecosystem. And so the vast majority of B2B purchases, and therefore the vast majority of you who are watching this and who are in B2B marketing, even or sales, are in a company where your category already exists. You have known competitors, and the category's probably been around for a while. And so your buyers are either replacing something, they're upgrading to the new version, latest generation of something, they're looking at renewing or replacing an existing solution. That's 78% of all purchases. So that's an important piece of data to have in mind. And that's true largely across all different solution types. But again, in our report, you can see how that differs by the type of solution that it is. So what we're looking at here is the number of solutions number of purchases that are brand new capabilities for an organization where they don't have a solution in that category before. And so if you're in SaaS, which is the highest, 29% of your buyers have not bought in that category before. Now, you may be in a company where 100% of your customers haven't bought that before, and that's definitely possible. 6 Sense was in that category 6 or 7 years ago. The category we're in now is one where a lot of our buyers already have an existing solution and they're looking to upgrade or replace, right? And so you can see what those numbers are across the board. What's really interesting when you dig into this data, and this was very surprising to us, was that everybody who will be part of that buying group says that they have experience with vendors. Now, when we asked this question, we didn't ask, are you aware of or do you know of the vendors? We asked, do you have prior experience with the vendors? Here's how we think that works out. That when you think about all of the B2B buying processes that ever start looking at vendors, only a small fraction of those end up buying something. So when you think about the number of people who've been involved in a buying process, it's dramatically greater than the number of people who actually purchased and used a solution. And then when you think about the fact that out of 5 solutions on average that are evaluated in a buying journey, only one of them gets bought. So you've got a lot more people who are looking at vendors than who are buying any particular vendor. What that tells us is it's just dramatically more likely that the people who are evaluating you now or next have evaluated you before in a context in which they did not end up buying you. And everybody ought to think about that, right? Everybody that you're going to be selling to has probably been through the experience of evaluating and not buying you. Doesn't mean they didn't want to, but for the most part, they didn't. So here's how that number breaks out. 90% of buyers overall say that they have prior experience with at least one of the vendors they're going to evaluate. That's a number that was very similar to what was found in some other research by, I believe it was Bain. Participants in our survey also said that they know 4 of the 5 vendors that they're going to evaluate on day one. In other words, when they arrive and decide on day one of their journey that they're going to evaluate some vendors, they know who 4 of those 5 are going to be on day one. What that tells you is you better make yourself aware, build your awareness within that audience prior to the time they go out into market. Buyers are going to buy from one of those 4 that they knew on day one, 85% of the time. So we got to think about this. When you think about the content that you produce, when you think about the tactics that you engage, how you present your company through both branding and demand gen content, it's almost always, in my experience, designed for people who need to be educated on the category, who may not know your brand, and who are starting essentially as blank slates. Your content is a blank slate theory of human nature content strategy, but your buyers are not that at all. Your buyers are experienced, they know your brand, they've experienced your brand firsthand before most of the time. And what you don't know today probably is what was that brand experience and what does that leave your potential buyers thinking about your brand? How do they think about your brand from those experiences that they've had in the past? Is it consistent with what your branding and what your demand gen stuff is saying today? If it isn't, it may cause some cognitive dissonance that make it difficult for them to choose you. If it is, then think about if a company went through a buying process and didn't buy from you, what would that experience have been? So I think it's important for every organization to do some research and to understand within your target audience, what is your buyer likely thinking about? Now, this is going to say a lot about the buying journey and what that's like. We're going to talk about that next time, but I already want you to think about the idea that what your buyers need is not education on your solutions, but they need ammunition to get their buying group to buy you, right? If they favor you, how do they get the rest of their group to follow along? We'll talk about that more next time. Your brand and product messaging have to support getting a yes from those different key personas. And they have to do that in the context of the fact that all of those buyer personas probably know who you are already, including the finance person. So if you've gone from being an expensive brand to a less expensive brand or the other way around, that's information that that buyer may not have. They may think of you differently than the way they do now. All right. So I want you all to think about that. We're going to talk more about what the buying journey is like based on this next time. All right. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.